Hey loves, welcome back to my channel. It's Ro, and today we are going to be making the treasure box purse, and we will start off with two 3-inch circles that you will fold in half. I used a Coco and Reno die for the circles, but you don't really need it as long as it's 3 inches. And then the 3-inch circle, you will fold it in half. I also cut a smaller circle, which is 2.5 inch, and then I will cut that in half. You will line those bigger half circles with the smaller half circles just on one side. And then once you're done with that, what I did is I sewed mine, but you don't need to sew it. You will also need to glue the bigger circle together because right there it's still open. Okay, next up you will need a 6 by 4.75, and you will score it 0.5 on both sides. And then after that, you will also cut another piece of paper, which is 4.75 by 5, and then you will cut them into panels. And they will look like this. You will cut them into panels. Mine is, I believe, they're like around 0.75 to 1 inch. You don't really need to be specific as long as you divide all of the pieces kind of like evenly. This will give the wooden plank effect. And I also sewed mine after I glued everything, so it will look like that. You are now left with those 2.5 flaps, and this is where we do the snips. If you're new, do the snips. That's what it means. We cut those snips on the flaps so we can stick something on it. And once you're done with both of them, this is how it's gonna look. And then we will now stick those half circles to those flaps that we just cut. And what we're doing right now, this is going to be the cover of the chest. Gluing is a very tedious process, but it has to be done. Next, we glue the other side, and once you're done, this is how it's gonna look. That's the cover. The next thing that we're going to do, it's optional, you don't need to do it, but I wanted to do a little pocket on the cover of that chest. So if you do want to do this, you are going to need two pieces of paper measuring 6 by 1.5, and you will sandwich that zipper in the middle. I did get a few questions of how I put zippers in the purses that I make, so this is what I do. I don't usually glue the paper onto the zipper, but I found it easier to sew once it's glued on because it doesn't move that much. So this is what I'm doing. I am going to glue one side of each of the paper onto the zipper. This you have to put into consideration that you might need to snip a few inches, just a few on the side, because the measurement is going to change once you include the zipper. So the zipper, I think that's like 0.25 inch, so your paper is going to be wider than the 3 inches. Then we glue the other side. And after that, we are going to sew around the squares. But I did forget to mention that we are going to score 0.5 on both sides. So you will be left with a 5-inch long paper by 1.5. So after you sew, this is how it's going to look. You see those 0.5 inch corners that we didn't sew. Next thing I did was cut the excess zipper and we fold those flaps, and then we glue it onto the inside cover of our inside of our cover. Yeah. So we glue again, this is optional, you don't need to do this, but I thought, hey, like it would be nice if there's another pocket inside this purse. Plus you can't really put a lot inside. It's hard to open since it's paper, so it's not flexible. Anyway, next thing we need to do is we need to cut 0.5 strips, and then you score at 0.25. The length, I did not measure my length here. As long as it's the same size or bigger, I meant like longer than the chest, which is 5 inches. So technically you will need a 0.5 by 5, and then fold it in half. And then I did some sewing on both sides. And before I glue those sides, I also cut a 0.25 inch strip, which is going to be 3 inches, just to cover those sides, the other sides, the shorter side. That will also keep your zipper from sliding off, like that, where you hold the zipper, the closest zipper to closest zipper. Yeah, anyway, so there you go, that's how it looks. I already glued all of those strips. Next thing we need to do is we are going to make the base, and for that you will need 2 pieces of 6 by 3 paper, and just score at 0.5 on 3 sides. Next, you will also need 2 pieces of 3 by 3 papers, and this is going to be the side of your base. You notice here that I am scoring one side at 0.5. Next thing you do is you turn it, and then you are going to score at 0.25 on both sides, both of those sides. And you will do the same thing with the other paper. we are scoring the 0.25 because we are going to cut a diagonal line for the side of our chest, so the chest isn't like square box looking. So what we're doing is we are going to cut our diagonal line, but before that I will do the snip on our 0.5 score line. And then to cut our diagonal line, what you need to do is you are going to line up, if you have a cutting board, you are going to line up the top corner with the bottom score mark that we did, the 0.25 score mark. I hope you understood what I said. But yeah, it's the top corner, and then you line it with the bottom 0.25 score line. You see it looks diagonal now, doesn't look straight. And you will do the same thing on the other side, and you will do the same thing on the other piece of paper. And once you're done with that, this is how it's gonna look. Next, we're doing the snip, so we can glue the 4 pieces together. Okay, before I glued them together, I did some sewing. I sewed around the pieces, and next, I also did this before I glued the 4 pieces together. So what I did is I just cut a small square to glue on the side of the chest. This is the 3x3 square that we cut. So this is where I am going to attach the strips, which will attach to our the sling, the handle of our purse. So I also cut a 0.5 by 2 pieces of those. And then I am going to sew around the strip, that small strip, and then you will fold that strip after you sew it, if you are sewing, and then you are going to sew it onto that square, like in the middle. And then I'm bringing out my jump rings. You don't really need to do this part right now. You can even sew or glue the strips first, and then just open the jump ring and then insert it. But this jump ring, it's really thick and sometimes it's hard to open it up, so I decided to just insert it right now. And then that's how it looks once you're done sewing it onto that piece. And I believe we are ready to put the 4 pieces together. Once you're done gluing the 4 pieces together, you will need to cut a piece of paper to cover that bottom, and the piece of paper is going to measure 2.5 by 5, and that's how it looks. Next thing we are going to do is we are going to line the insides of our box, the inside of our box, and with we are going to need 2 pieces of 5 by 3, and you will score at you'll score at 0.5. And then for the smaller squares, the 3 by 3, oh, as you can see, I already cut diagonally. I cut the diagonal line so it would fit inside. You will also score at 0.5 on the 3-inch side, not the 2.5 side. So it's the wider side. And then when you put it inside your box, your chest, it will look like this. So make sure that the flaps are on top and not on the bottom. If ever my explanations, I know I'm not the best person who explains when explaining their tutorial, but if you do have any questions, please let me know. Okay, up next, so you glue 3 sides except for one of the bigger side, because we are still going to put the hinge to glue together the cover of the box and the box itself. I also forgot that I need to line the bottom inside, so I just cut 5 by 2.5 inch of paper. So we line the inside, and then next, this is the hinge. So for this one, you are going to need a paper measuring 1 by 5, and then you will fold in half on the 1-inch side, so you will have something that looks like this. And the next thing you do is you glue 1/2, you glue 0.5 onto the cover of the chest, and then the other 0.5 you will glue to the box itself. And once you're done gluing that, you are going to glue in that liner. And this is how it looks. We are almost done. So once you glued every liner down, we are now going to cut a piece of paper measuring 5 by 3, and then you will score all sides at 0.5, and then you cut that inner square that it makes, so you can make that frame. Once you have the frame, you sew if you sew, and then you glue it. Next up, here what I'm doing here is I cut two circles, and then I cut a hole inside those 2 circles, and then what I did is I glued only half of the 2 circles, and then the other half I am going to glue onto that small piece of small square. As you can see here, that's the fold, so that's how it's gonna look. This is optional. You don't need to make this. This is going to be the lock, where you put the padlock. Next thing I'm doing is I am going to make a slit so I could insert that the circle, and so this is how it looks once you have that slit. So you insert this part of the circle that's not glued together, and then you will glue it under that square so it stays in place. Also, when I said optional, it just means that you don't need to make this type of closure. Okay, once you're done gluing that, we are going to cut another strip of paper, which will be our strap for the lock. So for this one, I am cutting a 1 inch by 6.5 piece of paper. I sewed it around, and then I also cut a slit so you can insert our lock. I don't know what you call it, but yeah, that's how it looks. So there. So when you insert it, that's how it's gonna look. And then if you have a padlock, you can lock it close, the chest. So after that, I am going to glue the lock part, and I'm also gonna glue the strap. And once you're done, this is how it's gonna look. Off cam, I went ahead and embellished it so it looks like they look like rivets for the treasure chest. And then yeah, all that's left to do is embellish it. So I'm gonna show you how the treasure chest looks after I embellished it. So it looks like that. And then the last thing we're gonna do is we are going to make our strap. And for the strap, I just cut a piece of paper. It's a 0.75 by, I believe, 12, but it's really up to you how long you want your straps to look like. And then what I did is I just sewed it around and then inserted in the jump rings that we have on the side. I used eyelets to keep the strap in place. And yep, that's it. We are done. Thank you so much for stopping by. I hope you enjoyed the video, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye.